You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Haristadoulou, and today, on this very Tuesday, as we do every week, Week 4 is now in the books, which means we're turning the page and taking a look at Week number 5, and we always start that off by diving into some power rankings, looking back at all of this weekend's games, and ranking the teams from worst to first through the tier list. So as always, I invite you all to comment down below anything you saw from this past weekend. Fire away in the comments. Let me hear from you, whatever your takeaways might be. Or if you want to rank these teams yourselves in any order, top 5, maybe a top 10 if you don't want to do a whole 32, or if you just agree or disagree, let me hear from you. But we'll start from the bottom and work our way up as we always do. First, I'll show you, obviously, last week's rankings. This was going into week number 4, so we will clear out the board, clean slate. And again, from the bottom to the top, starting with the probably picks, top 5 category at the very bottom. And at this point, it feels a little clear cut. We're going Tennessee Titans, followed by the New York Jets. We have the Saints, the Panthers, and then to round out the group, the Miami Dolphins, who finally got themselves their first W of the season. Now, when I look at the Titans, I think Cam Ward's post-game statements kind of sum up where this team is ass. And he said it himself. If we're keeping it a buck, we're ass. And unfortunately, coming out of a game where offense was not able to put up a single point on the board, and you made a Texans offense that has been very much not great to this point in the season look pretty good. I know it's early, and it's still technically early in Coach Brian Callahan's head coaching career with the Tennessee Titans, but something tells me, based off of the noise surrounding Tennessee right now and some of the things that have already happened this season, that Brian Callahan's time as head coach could be on the hot seat. Right above him, though, the Jets, and I mean, you look at the 3 fumbles in this game, 2 right off the rip. Third one obviously does not help in the second half. Basically, same old Jets, man. And I'm mad at myself for predicting them to beat the Dolphins in this game, because hindsight's always 20/20, but same old Jets, man. I said it last week coming out of their loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they stole a win and then ultimately ended up giving it away at the end. Same old Jets, and it's really a shame. Saints right above them at 0-4, in my eyes, the best team without a win currently. Despite being 0-4, New Orleans has done a really good job of making every single opponent that they've played this season earn that victory, and I would say they even did so with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that I expect to lose a lot more games. I've basically pinned them as a team that's probably picking somewhere in the top 5, obviously, but maybe even like top 3, too, maybe even with that number 1 selection. They're keeping it close, though, which is a nice pitch to whoever it is that they are potentially looking to draft in this year's NFL draft. I think as it stands right now, there is some good talent on this team on both sides of the football. Yeah, there are some aging veterans that you can look at and go, well, we need to get younger at these spots here. But overall, the Saints are at least built like a solid team, but a team that, again, doesn't really need to win right now. They need a franchise quarterback. 0-4 as it is, but they're making every single team, including the Buffalo Bills, who didn't really pull away until the later stages of that fourth quarter, earn those victories against them. The Panthers right above them, it's insane to me to see a team go from blowing out their division rival 30-0 and then ultimately get blown out the following week in arguably worse fashion, 42-13, where you're losing in every single phase of the game. I don't really know where the Panthers stand right now, because I came into this season basically saying I didn't buy what we got from Bryce Young at the end of last year, and while there is, some intrigue as far as young talent is concerned in Carolina, especially at the wide receiver spot, and I'm a big fan of Chuba Hubbard's game as well, I don't really know about Bryce Young at this point, and I've been off the wagon for a while, and again, didn't really buy what happened towards the end of last season, and I know there's more going on than just Bryce Young at this current moment, but this is a team that feels like they need their owner to stop making executive decisions come draft time and just let the football guys make football decisions going forward. Then the Dolphins round out the group, escaping New York with a victory on Monday Night Football. Uniforms, I've got to say, fine. Like, the dirty water that they were calling it, which is interesting because that's like a Boston thing. But at the same time, the way I see it, the Dolphins, get the W they need to, again, extend that tenure of Mike McDaniel, but this almost feels like a loss because losing Tyreek Hill at this point in the season to what sounds like an injury that is devastating enough to potentially even need more surgery beyond the initial surgery he already got, he's probably not going to be ready for the 2026 season if that really is how things work out. If there's like one positive you can take away from the game, Darren Waller had some good moments, and maybe he winds up being a guy that helps replace that production, but I don't think, like, it's just, it already was tough in Miami as it is, and losing Tua, yeah, you come away with a victory, but it's one of those, like, at what cost type of situations, and it's just tough to really celebrate, I would assume, if you're a Miami Dolphins fan this morning, or this afternoon. Moving into the swirling the toilet category, those down but not quite out teams, we're going to start off with the Raiders at the very bottom of the group, the Browns right above them, Giants up next, followed by the Cowboys, then the Bengals, Texans, and then the Bears at the very top of the group. And a team that, we'll get to the Bears, I was very close to having in that Jeff Fisher club, but not 100% sure just yet. The Raiders, though, Geno Smith now has kind of flip-flopped back and forth between his performances with 4 straight weeks of whether it's just like good performance, bad performance, good performance, bad performance. And it's one of those things where if you could just get a little bit more consistency out of him, you're probably not staring down the face of a loss in this game here. But ultimately, you end up losing on a blocked field goal. Ashton Genty finally has his big breakout game in the pros, which is great. And despite the offensive turnovers that you dealt with, which totaled up to 4, you still, again, we're losing at the very end of the game. So a cleaner performance on your part, and you probably steal this one from Chicago. I mean, you were literally in position to win the game, and just a special teams gaffe to go along with, obviously, the turnovers you dealt with during the game ultimately cost you. But I don't know, man. I personally thought the Raiders would be better than this. I didn't think they'd be 1-3 to start the season, maybe a little bit better, like 2-2, something along those lines. But this is where we are right now. And at the very least, you finally got, as far as like Ashton Genty is concerned, that big game for him out of the way. And hopefully that snowballs into more good for him going down the road, because that was one of those things that I felt like was kind of like a dark cloud over the Raiders at this point. Ashton Genty, highly touted prospect, hadn't quite had that big game yet. Now he does. The Browns right above them, realistically, I don't even really have much to say about the game, because Joe Flacco is what Joe Flacco is at this stage in his career. High risk, high reward. And I mean, you look at the floater that he threw to Kirby Joseph next to the sideline. That's literally what I'm talking about when I say that type of thing. Like, you'll get some good plays out of him, but you'll also get boneheaded plays like that. It's a shame that the defense is playing opposite of the Cleveland Browns offense, because the way this defense looks right now, this is a good unit, a competitive one that could definitely be helping carry a just semi-competent offense to a potential division title if they just had competent offensive play. But as it currently stands right now, the quarterback situation is in dire straits. Joe Flacco, respect what he's doing at this stage in his career, but I don't think he's going to be carrying this Cleveland Browns team to a playoff berth. Now, I've said that out in the open, and I'm sure that ends up being the opposite case in some fantasy world, but it's just one of those things where it's a shame, because the defense is really good. They kept the game really tight up until the punt return touchdown that was allowed in the fourth quarter. So this is the Browns this year. Really good defense that'll make teams kind of earn their victories against them, but the offense just, at this point, like, I'm ready to see the young guys. That's kind of where I am with them. The Giants right above them, speaking of letting the young guys play here, Jackson Dart leading the Giants to one of the bigger upsets that we have seen, if not the biggest upset of the season at this point. And this is despite losing Malik Neighbors, and a similar situation to the Miami Dolphins, where your defense is giving Justin Herbert and that offensive line all they could handle. You're coming away with a couple of interceptions, as Justin Herbert was basically coming into this game playing the best out of any quarterback in the NFL to this point. Like, it was just unbelievable the way he was throwing the rock. Tough game, took advantage of the offensive line, banged up, and you lose Malik Neighbors in the process. So it's like, again, a win, but at what cost, and how much are you really celebrating right now? I think more people are talking about losing Malik Neighbors for the season than you are the upset victory that could have been an exciting moment for this Giants team. Right above them, the Dallas Cowboys now sitting at 1-2-1. Not super surprised that we got the game that we got, because whether you like Dak Prescott or not, he can sling it with the best of them in situations, especially when it turns into a game like that. I'm more surprised at how the Packers defense played in that game more than anything else. Like, if you give Dak Prescott time and opportunity, and he still has George Pickens, like a lot of people were thinking, oh no, CeeDee Lamb's gone. What does this Cowboys team do? Well, George Pickens, a lot of people still consider him, I would assume, a number one. Yeah, he can be a bit of a head case to deal with, and that's why he's not in Pittsburgh anymore, but he is a number one. So you still had a legit guy leading that wide receiver room. You got excellent production from some of the other guys in that room as well. Chunk plays that the defense are allowing on a weekly basis, though, are going to be the end of this team, because if your defense could even just stop one singular play, you could have an upset victory. Right above them, the Texans, like I said earlier, an offense that has been down and out, but finally found a way going up against the Tennessee Titans. This was a desperately needed win for the Texans team, and the way it's unfortunate that it took this long, I guess you could say. Hopefully, maybe this is a sign of them figuring things out. This is by far the best protection we've seen for CJ Stroud in, I would say, something like dating back to potentially the beginning of last season. Like, the offensive line has just not done a great job protecting him, but they did a good job in this game. Nick Chubb looked solid, but I do think a bright spot that kind of came out of nowhere, and I'll be interested to seeing if that turns into anything else, was Woody Marks out of the backfield, having himself a really good game. I genuinely, listen, I cover the league the best I can. I don't know every single guy on every single roster. Didn't even know Woody Marks was a name on the Houston Texans. I'll admit that happily. So shout out to him. Hopefully that turns into maybe a little bit more for the Houston Texans down the line. But as of right now, in the win column, you got that out of the way, hopefully with a win against a division rival, even if it is a Titans team that looks like they are trending extremely in the wrong direction. Maybe you can build off of this. And then the Bears rounding out the group here. It was definitely a grind offensively. Like, it was not perfect the way we've seen some really good performances from Caleb Williams the last few weeks here. So I will say not quite that same level of offense, but the defense making massive plays, obviously coming away with 3 interceptions. You look at Kevin Byard with a couple of picks he had. They were all over Jacoby Myers in this game. All 3 of those interceptions were intended for Jacoby Myers, and between the 2 that Kevin Byard had, and I believe it was Tyreek Stevenson who had the other one, nobody was letting Jacoby Myers catch the football in that game. So crazy stuff there. But obviously, even when the defense was bending late in the game in field goal range, Josh Blackwell, massive punt block. The thing you can take away from this game in my eyes, and this is why, like, I have them right on the cusp of Jeff Fisher Club, and if you want to have them in that 500 club, that's fine. I think that's a fair argument to make, because this, in my eyes, is a game that in years past, Chicago does not win. In years past, they lose this game on the game-winning field goal. This feels a little bit different. It feels a little bit like the buy-in from the team. Back-to-back victories, good stuff for Chicago. Give me one more. That's all I'm saying. Give me another win next week, and then I'll start to feel really good about this Bears team and the direction they're heading. Moving into that next group, though, the Jeff Fisher 500 club category, we start off with the Arizona Cardinals, followed by the Patriots. We go Vikings, Ravens, Commanders, and then the group is rounded out at the very top by the Atlanta Falcons. Now, looking at the Cardinals, when you're waiting until the fourth quarter to put up 14 points to basically claw yourself back into the game, Kyler Murray's been in Arizona for a while now, and I have weeks where I'm like, we're starting to see it, and then I have weeks where I go, I just don't know about this. And I think we're now 7 seasons into that kind of situation with Kyler Murray, and between that inconsistency and the injuries, I'm really starting to question if at this point it might be time to start thinking about, at the very least, what a future without him at quarterback looks like. It's not to say that this season is over and done with. It's just you get such whoop-de-wop like performances from him. One week it's really good, another week it's not so good, and his legs are obviously such a threat when it comes to him playing the quarterback position. Like, I don't know what to make of this offense. And I feel like I have said that for the better part of, like, basically Kyler Murray's stint in Arizona at this point now. So something is not working. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not saying it's Kyler Murray at this point, but I feel like I might be heading in that direction, and I'm not quite sure. But I'd be curious what Cardinals fans kind of feel on that one, because I don't really know what to feel. Patriots right above them. I think efficient is by far the best way to describe them. Moving on to 2-2, that was an absolute clinic all three phases of the game. And you look at this Patriots team, they're maybe 2 of the 5 turnovers that they had last week against the Steelers away from potentially being 3-1 right now. If they didn't kill themselves in that game last week, we're having a wildly different conversation about the current state of New England here. So if they can continue to play the game of football the way they are, which is when they're playing it the way they want to, good, clean, efficient football. Drake May going, 14 of 17 for a little over 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns, ran one in as well. You have special teams contributing at a crazy rate. Marcus Jones finished the game with a punt return touchdown and 167 yards altogether. That puts teams in a situation where you're like, we don't even want to kick it to this guy anymore. So how do we get the ball away from him or in a spot where he can't return it? So defense is letting up, there's, 2 touchdowns, one at the beginning of the game, one at the end of the game, not really giving up much there. And you look at the last few weeks, it's not like the teams are scoring a lot. Now you have Christian Gonzalez back in the fold. If this offense stays efficient, cleans up the mistakes that they've made, and it stays like that going forward, and the defense can get even better now that Gonzo's back in the fold, and you're getting all this help from special teams as well, this is an effective and efficient football team. Right above them, Vikings. Rough game for Carson Wentz, really rough game. 2 interceptions, that could have been 3 on the final offensive drive from Minnesota out of the gate. It ultimately got called back, but the way I see it, if this offense could have just found its footing a little bit earlier in the game, we could probably be having a different conversation about them. It took you 15 points in the fourth quarter to even set yourself up for a potential win, and you got it too. Like, the defense gives you a 3-and-out, sets you up to win that football game, and it takes you 6 plays and a handful of seconds to ultimately just turn the ball over on downs, and you ultimately give it up and lose to Pittsburgh. So, tough loss. The good news is this team is competitive even without their starting quarterback. Obviously, what we got last week, probably not going to see that again out of Minnesota. That just feels like a Cincinnati Bengals team that is just tumbling away to the bottom of the barrel, I guess, to put it simply. But you can at least count on the defense putting up big performances for you. And if Carson Wentz can just have good games, it doesn't even have to be great, just good games, this is a team that can be competitive. And, they're fighting for maybe that 7 or 6 seeds, something along those lines, maybe a little bit more. I don't know if division is really in their sights, although things are a little bit wide open right now with the Packers having a win over Detroit. Detroit's, though, 3-1, and the Packers are currently sitting at 2-1 themselves. So the division's still open per se, but I don't know how long, especially with, where's J.J. McCarthy? How long is it going to take for him to come back? It sounds like he's going to be gone for at least a few more weeks. And then what does he even look like coming back? A lot of question marks surrounding Minnesota, but the team is at least good enough to be competitive and around this 500 mark. The Ravens, 1-3, man. I'm genuinely worried about Baltimore. You look at the list of guys that are currently injured on this team, and I don't really know how you still feel good about the position Baltimore is in. Losing Nnamdi Madubuike is just a blow to this defense. And the defense at this point can't really afford those types of losses. Lamar Jackson's hamstring is obviously going to be a conversation and something worth watching, not even just this week, but through the duration of the season, because Lamar's the type of guy that he wants to keep playing, but if you take away his ability to run, or at least run the way he wants to run, it's not going to be the same type of performance that like Lamar Jackson is known for. So this team has got to get healthy. They've got to find a way to get Derrick Henry rolling again. Literally no more than 50 yards since that week number 1 performance where against Buffalo, it looked like the Ravens were going to run through opponents offensively again this season. And since then, it doesn't even look like the same football team. So they've got to get better on defense. They've got to find a way to start running the football more effectively. I'm genuinely concerned about this team. I can't believe the Ravens are 1-3 right now. I really cannot. Right above them, Commanders. I think it says a lot about a football team when you can be in a game till the very end, even if it felt like you were trying to claw your way back into that game the entirety of the contest. the fact that you had no Jaden Daniels and no Terry McLaurin in this one, and it still comes down to a tight contest to the finish line, you've got to feel pretty good about that as a team. And I think that also just speaks to where this team is talent-wise, the coaching, and just the belief of what's going on over there, even with Jaden Daniels missing time. Now, I will say I'm surprised he didn't play this week. I kind of thought he was going to be in, and the Terry McLaurin thing, I feel like kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. So we'll see just how healthy these guys are. I feel like this should be the week that we see Jaden Daniels now. I don't know. I know that Marcus Mariota playing really well the previous week is probably what led to the extra stage of caution, and ultimately you lose by a possession. So it's fine. Not a big deal. You hope to get that type of game back once Jaden Daniels is in the fold, but hopefully these guys can get healthy. But the fact that you're without wide receiver 1, you're without QB 1, and you're still tight in contests like this, I think it speaks a lot about the team. The Falcons right above them to round out the group. Great homestand and a win you want to have against an opposing team, missing their QB 1 and wide receiver 1. You got a real taste of what this offense could look like when everything's clicking, and I think that's got to be one of those things where, like, this win is nice, but you see what the offense could actually do as Michael Penix continues to progress and get more and more comfortable in this offense as a starter. He hasn't even started a full season's worth of games at this point. So you've got to feel good knowing that the potential for the boom of this offense is absolutely there. I feel like we've talked about it a lot over the years, basically going back to like when Kyle Pitts first got drafted, and then you add, of course, Drake London and Bijan Robinson as the years and drafts go by. Now we're in a position where, as Michael Penix continues to get more and more comfortable, yes, last week was crazy. 30-0 loss to the Panthers, not a great look. Hopefully you could put that behind you, and it looks like Michael Penix did. So if you can continue to just work with that bounce back, 76% of his passes completed this week. He looked really, really good. Excited to see what this Falcons team does going forward. I think they're going to be jockeying for a playoff spot, and that's why I have them where I do. Moving into the playoff hopefuls, as I always like to break down before we go into it, a reminder, there must be 7 teams from both the AFC and NFC to give you the 14 playoff teams. There, of course, must be a division winner for all 8 divisions, and then the remaining 6 wildcard teams are split 3-3 between the AFC and NFC. So when you're looking at this, that is why it's set up the way it is. That being said, we start off playoff hopefuls. 49ers, followed by the Jaguars, the Broncos, Steelers, Seahawks, Chiefs, Colts, and then rounding out the group falling out of the Super Bowl contenders category, the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, the 49ers, absolutely not the type of loss you want, especially when you're at home, especially when you're getting QB1 back, especially when Jawan Jennings is also coming back in the fold as well. You go through this game, and Christian McCaffrey is ultimately your leading receiver. And don't get me wrong, Christian McCaffrey, absolute stud. Not necessarily the worst person in the world you'd want to have as your leading receiver in a football game. He can practically play wide receiver for you if you need him to. He's that talented. But you would hope that that's not what the stat line looks like with your QB1. Like that is, if you told me that this was last week and Jawan Jennings wasn't playing and Mac Jones was still in, this stat line would make more sense to me, if that makes sense as far as offensive production goes. We'll see what happens with the 49ers. I genuinely thought they were going to get one over on the Jaguars, so hats off to Jacksonville for getting the job done. That is big reason why I have the Jaguars right in front of them where they are. Jacksonville doesn't win the prettiest of football games. It feels like every single win they've had has been pretty much a grind. Even like against the Carolina Panthers in week number 1, it took them a little bit to come away with that game. But ultimately, they're winning football games. And at the end of the day, whether you want to say it's an ugly win, a clean win, a massive win, whatever you want to throw in front of win, at the end of the day, a win is a win in the NFL, and all that matters is you're adding another number to that win column. And as it stands right now, Jacksonville 3-1, and at this point, a playoff team. Broncos right above them, the exact type of win you'd want to have against a Cincinnati Bengals team. You do not want this team hanging around with you. You don't want this team feeling like they could have got one over you. You don't want anyone else feeling that way from the outside looking in. And Denver came in, completely shut down the offense, damn near pitched a shutout, only 3 points allowed, obviously. Bo Nix looked good. Defense did their thing. I think a good takeaway from this game, though, aside from those, take a look at the running back room. J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey looked great. That is the run game that you need Denver to start finding each and every single week going forward. It helps balance out the offense. It helps take some of the pressure off of Bo Nix. If J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey can build off of the performance they had this past week, I think things start to open up for this Denver Broncos offense as they try to find their footing again, because it's been a tough few weeks offensively for them. This felt like a bit of a bounce-back game, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were able to run the football effectively this week. Right above them, the Pittsburgh Steelers. It felt like Steelers football for a good 3 quarters. You get into that fourth quarter, and I don't really know what the hell happened, but that was probably the most menacing that defense has looked all season. You could probably point to what they did to the Patriots last week as well, but that just felt like suffocating Pittsburgh Steelers defense, whereas last week it was more like opportunistic, but this felt more like the Steelers to me. Rodgers was efficient. He and DK Metcalf, it feels like each and every single week are getting more and more comfortable together. And you saw it was that, what was it, an 80-yard score? I believe it was 80 yards because the NFL was talking about longest play in international history. Are we going to have international records now? Is that really where we're heading? But yes, the connection with DK Metcalf seems to be finding itself each and every single week. And if the defense is finding its footing now, because you have 2 really good weeks of back-to-back performances, turnovers forced, you're able to hold the team from moving the football or stopping them when they're getting close to scoring. If that's the Pittsburgh Steelers defense finding themselves over these last couple of weeks, it feels like the Steelers team is finding its form. Good defense, solid offense that is just playing good football, making a big play or two here or there, as Aaron Rodgers clearly still might not be the guy that he was, but he still has that Aaron Rodgers magic to him from time to time. This is a Steelers team that's competing. Right above them, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, and you want to talk about a statement win for Kansas City over arguably a rival, if you want to call them that, with the way the Ravens and Chiefs have been built over the last handful of years as Lamar and Patrick Mahomes have ascended their way in the NFL. Xavier Worthy is the key. I've been saying this for a while. I'm mad at myself for not taking the Chiefs in this game, and honestly, I look at my predictions this week, and in hindsight, I have asked myself a handful of times, what the hell were you thinking on a number of games? This was one of them. I sometimes just love to find ways to talk myself out of obvious answers, and I feel like that's what really happened to me this week. Xavier Worthy coming in, 121 total yards. He is supposed to be the guy for this offense. And once Rashee Rice comes back, things I think are really going to get going. But Patrick Mahomes looked like Patrick Mahomes from 50 touchdown season, Patrick Mahomes, like that very first year. That's what things started to look like against Baltimore's defense. And from controlling the ball offensively, I think they had over 10 more minutes of total possession time, stifling Lamar and Derrick Henry ultimately until Lamar Jackson exited the football game, and then continuing to stifle Derrick Henry himself. This looks like the Chiefs team that I was expecting to see this year. Obviously now Xavier Worthy back in the fold is going to be huge. It's going to open things up. Travis Kelce does not have to be the focus of the offense as was intended. And if this is what it is with Xavier Worthy in the fold, now let's just imagine what it's going to look like in a few weeks once Rashee Rice is back into it as well. Colts right above them at 3-1. First game that Daniel Jones started to look like the Daniel Jones of New York. And the offensive line, that's looked really good so far this season, felt like they were kind of dealing with all they could handle. And respectfully so, Rams got a really good defensive front. I don't know what, because it's a celebration thing. And that's what it is. Like A.D. Mitchell's fumble into the back of the end zone for a touchback. It's a celebration thing. If I am a head coach, if I am a offensive coordinator, a wide receivers coach, anyone that at some point or another is in charge of wide receivers, or just any skill player that could be taking the football from outside the end zone to inside the end zone, I am looking every single person dead in the eyes after seeing that and going, do not celebrate until you are inside the end zone. I don't care if you're 10, 15 yards ahead of everybody. Don't start walking into the end zone. Don't start high-stepping into the end zone. Holy hell, just get in the end zone and score, and then have at it. Do what you want to do. Don't cost us 15 yards, but do what you got to do. The celebration thing that is constantly, and it feels like it happens every few years, but in this case, it could arguably have costed Indianapolis the game. It happens often enough that someone needs to step up and just be like, stop doing this. Get in the end zone. I don't know. I can't believe that's one of the main reasons why the Colts are sitting at 3-1. Insane. Like the turnover things from Daniel Jones is what it is. You can point to a lot of that. That right there, though, was 6 points literally wiped off the board. Can't get more punishing than that. Right above them to round out the category, Chargers at 3-1. Loss was certainly shocking, but I think the real story is obviously the offensive line at this point. Justin Herbert clearly under pressure, struggling through the game. Couple of bad throws turn into interceptions. But the O-line, Joe Alt getting carted away, it's in tatters at this point. And I don't know if the offensive line or just the tackle spot in L.A. is just cursed, whatever it may be, at least on the Chargers end. You just got to hope for the best, but this is a concern because when things start to go south like this for offensive lines, it typically does not end well. I take a good look at the Bengals, take a good look at the Texans, teams that have good quarterbacks, but poor offensive line play. Like fingers crossed that, because I haven't seen anything regarding Joe Alt yet. I also haven't looked extremely hard. I've just been busy, but fingers crossed that that's not serious. But if that's season ending, I mean, I genuinely don't know who's starting on the offensive line for the Chargers anymore. If you want to take some positives away from the game, though, Omarion Hampton appears to have found himself. He looked really good in this game. I was super high on him in the draft, so great to see him have a really good breakout game. And Quentin Johnston continues to catch balls, continues to catch touchdowns. And at some point, I think we all need to just accept that Quentin Johnston has figured it out, which is great. Granted, it took a little bit to get here, but it seems like he's figured it out. He might still have a drop or two, but he's producing, and that's what matters. And then moving into the Super Bowl contenders category to wrap up this week's rankings. At the bottom, Packers sitting at 2-1-1. Rams right above them. Buccaneers at number 4. Lions at 3. Bills at 2. And then the Eagles sitting at the mountaintop once again. Now the Packers, I don't know if they just kind of left the defense at home this week. You only had 44 points allowed this season through the first 3 games of the season and basically gave it all up in one entire game against the Cowboys. And it's not even like you could point to the fact that the game had overtime. You only allowed 3 points in OT. There was 37 points allowed in regulation. It's funny because Jerry Jones at the end of the game was quoted as saying, like, they got Micah Parsons, we got what we got, and we tied. That's a crazy statement that I know what he's trying to say, but Micah Parsons, to his credit, being in Green Bay, might have arguably had one of the biggest game-saving tackles in overtime to ultimately help them win this football game. I don't know what the heck was going on with clock management at the end of overtime. It felt like Green Bay just did not realize like the clock was ticking. I don't know. But just another back-to-back shocking performances. Last week, it felt like not being ready for the Cleveland Browns. This week, just the defense completely absent after such a strong start to the season. We'll see where everything goes, but I could not believe that this is what we got out of Green Bay this week. Offensively, I'm not super surprised. I'm very high on Jordan Love. I'm very high on this offense and what they could potentially do. And I mean, Romeo Doubs, 3 touchdown game. That's what he does. He loves to make big plays. And so offensively, I'm not. It's just the defense. It felt like both sides, honestly, just walked into the stadium going, no defense today. We're just putting up points. Rams right above them. Puka Nacua. 2 words, plain and simple. 13 receptions, 170 yards, and a tutty to go with it all. Matthew Stafford loves his guy, obviously, loves feeding him the football. He even looked like he turned back the clock a little bit with the 375 yards that he threw. And the defense, as I mentioned earlier, looks damn good. That defensive front is so young and so talented, and they're only getting better each and every single week, season to season. I am very excited to see with this and even the secondary too. A lot of really young guys over there, tons of cams in that secondary, a lot of really good guys though. I'm very excited to see this Rams team by like season's end when they've really figured out what they're doing this year, because already they're a force to be reckoned with. And the offense seems to really be thriving with Devontae Adams, with Puka Nacua. You also had oh my God, I'm blanking on his name with the 88-yard score. Tutu Atwell. Excuse me, Tutu. But it's just one of those teams that they've got all the pieces. They really do. The defense is maybe just a little bit young and not as filled with household names, so people don't look at them the way they should, but this Rams defense is sneaky good, and they're getting better every single week. Right above them, the Buccaneers. Ultimately, a mess of a first half just made this game too difficult to overcome. But even then, it still winded up being a close contest where you had a couple of drives late in the game to potentially come away with a victory. Ultimately, you don't get it done. It is what it is. This was a big test for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I honestly thought they could get the job done. So I'm not too mad to have called that game a Tampa Bay win and then ultimately got it wrong. I really thought that Tampa Bay could have gotten it done. It just did not break their way this time. Eventually, the luck of game-winning drives would run out eventually, but this is one of those where Tampa Bay looked good even in the loss. If they just cleaned up some of the issues from the first half, we could be having a wildly different conversation. So even in a loss, I think Tampa Bay did come away looking pretty good. I still think they're one of the top teams to deal with. Health is going to be one of those things that we discuss, but the fact that you had Tristan Wirfs back, you had Chris Godwin back, who's obviously a little bit rusty. He had some key drops in that game. If you can just get all those guys back, get the rust knocked off, and everyone can just stay healthy, really good team. Altogether, defensively, offensively, starting 22 on both sides of the ball together. Lions right above them. It has been 3 weeks since Green Bay ultimately made everyone question what this Detroit Lions team could be. And in those 3 weeks, we have now seen them rattle off 3 straight comfortable victories when it was all said and done. Browns made them work a little bit for it, but they ultimately won by a decent amount. Having scored 124 points in their last 3 games. They have a league best 137 on the season. Obviously, 13 of those points only being scored against Green Bay in week number 1. But the last 3 games, 124 points. That is an average of 41 points per game in the last 3 that they have played. If you're a Packers fan and you're questioning how I could have Detroit above them right now, even though they have the win over Detroit, go ask your team how they lost to the Browns and why they couldn't get one over on the Dallas Cowboys, who literally don't have a defense. You forgot to bring yours, I guess, to the party. I don't know if that was like an agreement, but Detroit looks legit. I was worried about it coming out of week number 1, but at this point right now, it feels like they've kind of gone through the whole feel it out process and figure ourselves out. This feels like the Detroit Lions team we've been witnessing for the last couple of seasons at the very least, and it looks like another year of them doing the same. Right above them at number 2, the Bills. Defense deserves some big-time credit in this game because it was not perfect, especially like during the second quarter. Interception, punt. You had the overthrown interception from Josh Allen during that sequence of events there. But ultimately, the defense was able to hold off the Saints, who, again, as I mentioned when we were talking about New Orleans, they've been making teams earn their victories, and they hung around for quite a bit until late into that football game. James Cook, though, continues to run wild and honestly maybe didn't even get enough money from the Buffalo Bills. Dalton Kincaid's another story that I think we need to start talking about because it's taken him a little bit to really get his footing in this Bills offense, but you're looking at 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games, and that's a guy that's huge with all the athleticism and can catch the football. If he's figured it out, Josh Allen now has like that legit premier tight end threat that Patrick Mahomes had really early in his career that Josh Allen didn't have. He had the Stephon Diggs instead, whereas like Mahomes had Hill and Kelsey. He's starting to get that with his tight end and Dalton Kincaid. Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman continue to just grow together in a really impressive way. Josh Allen had one of the more like one-of-one type of plays that Josh Allen has had over the last handful of years. The 27-yard run that led to a touchdown the next play off of it was like a 20-something yard pass. You see that unfold and you go, basically Josh Allen can do that. I don't really know if anyone else can. Like Lamar's obviously a runner, but his game is not power. It's more finesse as opposed to what Josh Allen does where Lamar will run around you. Josh Allen will run through you. And I mean, Justin Herbert's like the only other big-bodied athletic quarterback, but he doesn't even run like that. Maybe Jalen Hurts is like the one exception that you could also, but even then, like Jalen Hurts isn't the size of Josh Allen. It's just a one-on-one type of play. Gotta have it moment where you want to put your team up and put this game away. It's just incredible what he does, man. And then the Eagles, right above him at number 1, holding on to that throne. Championship caliber teams win games like this, whether it's last week where you're down significantly, storm back to ultimately win with 2 massive plays made on special teams to secure the victory, or in a situation like this where you're out to a very comfortable lead, maybe fall asleep a little bit late in the game, other team gets back into it, but ultimately you can still put the football game away. Your defense comes up with a big interception on the second to last Tampa Bay drive, shuts it down on the final offensive drive for Tampa Bay. I mean, the Philadelphia is doing championship type things each and every single week. The first couple of weeks, it was all about the run game and not so much about the aerial attack. Week 3, you get that aerial offense. I feel like this week was a nice blend of everything again. Philadelphia is winning in a number of different ways and counting on a number of different people to pull out these wins. Championship caliber team. Championship style of winning. It's this way, it's this way, it's this way, whatever it takes to get the football win, or whatever it takes to win the football game, excuse me. Eagles are 4-0, and if you want to argue Buffalo, that's fine, but I like the resume of wins that Philadelphia has over Buffalo to this stage. It is what it is. Those are my rankings, though, going into week number 5. As always, comment down below. Let me hear from you. Thoughts, opinions, things you agree with, disagree with. What does your rankings look like? Give me a top 5, top 10 if you don't want to do all 32. I'm always interested in seeing what people have to say. But as always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. I will see you all tomorrow to predict our Thursday Night Football matchup for week number 5.